Hey everybody, welcome to BingeBot. We recap all the latest and greatest TV shows to help keep you in the loop. This time we're checking out season 2 of The Diplomat, which follows Kate Wyler, the new ambassador for the United Kingdom, who must deal with unexpected complications in both her politics and her personal life. As always, if you want to support the channel, you can do so via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee, and unlock some cool perks for your contributions. Let's get started with Episode 1, When a Stranger Calls. After the bomb explosion in MP Merritt Grove's car in central London, EMTs are rushed to the scene, swiftly working to save lives. They manage to pull 4 survivors from the wreckage. Hal Wyler, the husband of Ambassador Kate Wyler, Stuart Hayford, Deputy Chief of Commission, Office Clerk Ronnie Buckhurst, and Grove himself. Though Stuart and Ronnie survive, both sustain serious injuries, while Grove eventually succumbs to his wounds. Miles away in Paris, Kate and Austin Dennison, investigating the recent bombing of the British aircraft carrier HMS Courageous, are shaken by the news of the London attack, and without delay they fly to London. Upon landing, Kate heads directly to the hospital to check on her injured colleagues, while Dennison makes his way to Parliament. Each of them digs into what they uncovered in Paris, now suspicious that these attacks may be connected. At the hospital, Kate confides her growing suspicions to Idra Park, the CIA station chief in London. She voices her belief that Prime Minister Nicole Trowbridge orchestrated the attack to kill terrorist leader Roman Lenkov, fearing Lenkov might expose who had hired him to target the HMS Courageous. Meanwhile, Dennison discreetly shares Kate's theory with Tom Libby, the head of MI6, who hints that her suspicions might hold some truth. Soon, Kate learns that Hal is out of surgery, so she goes to see him, but the sight of him in a delirious state leaves her devastated. In Parliament, Dennison confronts Libby, who carefully confirms that there is weight to Kate's theory. He then meets with Lydia Trowbridge, the Prime Minister's wife, who, though evasive, drops subtle hints that she's aware of her husband's moral compromises. Back at the hospital, Kate tries to gather more information from Hal. In his foggy state, Hal recalls that only a few people knew about his meeting with Grove, including Kate, Stuart, Ronnie, and Margaret Roylan, a sharp-minded political operative who had learned of it from Kate. As she and Idra try to piece things together, they receive an urgent call to attend an emergency meeting at Whitehall. During the tense meeting, Trowbridge deflects, pointing the finger at Russia as the likely culprit behind the bombing. Yet Philippa, a high-ranking official, reveals forensic evidence shows no traces of Russian, Iranian, or Syrian involvement, but instead, the clues point to a British source. After the meeting, Kate, Dennison, and Idra gather to discuss how a British perpetrator could have executed the attack. Dennison informs them that Margaret Roylan has been missing since the attack, heightening their suspicions. Kate and Idra then speculate that Trowbridge may have enlisted Roylan and Grove to help stage the attack, and is now frantically searching for Roylan to remove any links back to him and his government. Idra presses for a deeper investigation into Trowbridge, and after a moment's hesitation, Kate agrees. As Kate processes these developments, she receives a supportive call from Billy Apaya, the White House Chief of Staff, who assures her of any help that she might need. Later, Kate and Idra update Hal on Roylan's disappearance and their suspicions around Trowbridge's involvement. Shortly after, news of Stuart's condition comes in. He's out of immediate danger, but still unconscious, and tragically, Ronnie has passed away from his injuries. Shaken by Ronnie's loss and the gravity of Stuart's condition, Kate reaches out to U.S. Secretary of State Miguel Gannon. In a video call, she cautiously hints at the evidence implicating British involvement. Gannon underscores the need for solid proof before any formal accusations are made against Trowbridge. And later that day, a strange call comes into the hospital. A woman identifying herself as Anne Legendre Armstrong, who is actually Margaret Roylan, asks to speak with Kate. Episode 2, St. Paul's. St. Paul's Church fills with mourners for MP Merritt Grove's funeral. Despite the risks to her safety, Roylan attends the funeral as well, with Idra Park and her team taking every precaution. They disguise her appearance, and as the service concludes, they discreetly escort her out to ensure that she avoids any unwanted attention, especially from the Prime Minister, who sees Roylan but fails to get a hold of her. Back at the US Embassy in London, Idra meets Kate and informs her that Roylan is in the building and wants to speak with Dennison. She raises concerns about Roylan's security, urging Kate to take extra precautions, but despite some resistance, Kate agrees to bring Dennison in to meet with Roylan. In a private room, Roylan finally reveals the truth to Kate, Idra, and Dennison. Roman Lenkov, the Russian mercenary leader, had been hired by Merritt Grove himself to launch a missile attack on the HMS Courageous.
Roman Lenkov was hired by British citizens to launch a missile at HMS Courageous.
she explains that Grove orchestrated the strike to distract from domestic issues, hoping to unite the United Kingdom amidst rising Scottish independence movements. When they press her about Prime Minister Nicole Trowbridge's potential involvement, Royland insists he had no part in Groves' plans, yet Kate, Idra, and Dennison remain skeptical. Suddenly, Kate receives word that Trowbridge plans to visit the embassy to sign a condolence book in honor of Ronnie Buckhurst. As the news stirs up tension, Kate, Dennison, and Idra urgently debate what to do with Royland. Idra suggests moving her to a safe house, a plan that Kate and Dennison reluctantly accept. During the condolence book signing, Kate's unease is palpable, her suspicions about Trowbridge's role in the attack gnawing at her, and after the ceremony, Trowbridge requests a private conversation with Kate in her office, steering the discussion subtly towards Royland. Kate, wary of his intentions, responds with guarded language, careful not to reveal too much. As Trowbridge leaves, Kate confides in Stuart, sharing her suspicions about Trowbridge and revealing that Royland is hiding within the embassy. Shocked, Stuart confronts Idra for harboring Royland, with the discussion escalating into a heated argument. He fears the diplomatic fallout and urges caution, favoring protocol and discretion, while Idra argues for a more direct investigation into Trowbridge's possible involvement. Later, during the solemn send-off of Ronnie's body to the US, Stuart takes Kate aside to reprimand her for being involved with Royland despite his warnings to her when she first landed in London. The gravity of the day weighs on Kate as she returns home, her mind filled with doubts and unanswered questions. That night, the strain of the day's events bleeds into her personal life. Tensions erupt between Kate and Hal as they argue over trust, diplomacy, and his habit of undermining her authority. Their conflicting views boil over, creating a painful rift in their marriage, and Kate is left grappling with both professional turmoil and personal heartache. Episode 3: The Ides of March. Prime Minister Nicole Trowbridge releases a carefully crafted statement to the public, claiming that Roman Lenkoff's death was the result of a calculated operation to eliminate a dangerous terrorist. Yet, in stark contrast, the truth reveals a much murkier story. Lenkoff was executed in his bed in silence with no struggle by British special forces. Trowbridge's polished speech rings hollow to several members of his government who see it as a smokescreen, and among them, Foreign Secretary Austin Dennison takes a stand, rallying other members of Parliament to sign a petition calling for Trowbridge's resignation. Meanwhile, tensions mount around Margaret Royland. Kate and Idra grow wary of her intentions and her possible involvement in the HMS Courageous bombing. Idra pushes Royland for answers, while Kate considers the fallout of keeping her in CIA custody. As 4th of July preparations at Kate's mansion unfold, Stuart presses her to hand Royland over to the British authorities to avoid further diplomatic entanglements, but Kate resists, weighing her next move carefully. As Trowbridge's credibility starts to falter, Dennison, a potential candidate for Prime Minister, turns to Kate. He quietly asks if she might allow him to confront Trowbridge in private during the 4th of July celebration at her estate. He envisions a quiet corner where he can deliver a candid message to Trowbridge, telling the PM that his time in office is over. Meanwhile, Kate's husband Hal sees the party as an ideal chance to bolster her potential US vice presidential bid, setting the stage for multiple layers of political maneuvering. Stuart, frustrated by Kate's growing closeness with Dennison and her insistence on holding on to Royland, calls White House Chief of Staff Billy Apaya. He raises concerns about Kate's judgment, suggesting she's impulsive and lacks the restraint that he believes a vice president should exhibit. He hints that her boundaries between personal and professional roles are dangerously blurred, further questioning her readiness for the second highest office at home. Later that day, as guests gather at the party, it becomes evident that Trowbridge's narrative on Lenkoff's death has struck a patriotic chord with the public, swaying many MPs who had initially considered opposing him back to his side. Only Dennison holds firm, mulling a drastic course of action. He contemplates resigning and publicly exposing Trowbridge's deceit, even at the cost of his own career. As the celebration winds down, Trowbridge pulls Kate aside and extends an invitation to join him in Scotland, where he intends to address the matter of Scotland's secession. That evening, as 4th of July fireworks burst across the sky, the explosions stir memories for Stuart and Hal, who both still carry trauma from the recent car bombing attack. Stuart quietly exits the party, leaving with a woman he meets while waiting for his car. Hal, however, finds solace in Kate's arms, hinting at a step towards reconciliation in their strained marriage. Episode 4: The Other Army. The following day, Idra's plan unfolds as intended. The woman who Stuart had picked up after he'd left the party turned out to be one of Idra's spies, who was ordered to monitor Stuart's loyalty to Kate. Idra's suspicions echo those of Billy Apaya, who shares concerns over Stuart's allegiance. After finding this out, the pressure finally drives Stuart to confront Kate. When he opens up, their mutual frustrations spill out and they reconcile, with Kate even confiding in him about her strained relationship with Hal.
I respect both choices, but if you stay, you have to pretend you don't hate me. You have to pretend even to yourself.
Is that what you do with Hal?
No, I still hate him.
Soon after, Kate and Idra meet with Margaret Roylan, revealing that Foreign Secretary Austin Dennison plans to go public with his suspicions of Prime Minister Nicole Trowbridge's involvement in the terrorist attacks, a move that would likely end both Dennison and Trowbridge's careers while pushing Scotland closer to secession. Alarmed, Roylan implores Kate to stop Dennison at any cost. Although she refuses to name everyone involved, she insists that Trowbridge had no part in the attack. Kate and Idra press her for the entire truth, but Roylan resists, saying she would rather confide in someone capable of keeping secrets. Kate quickly devises a plan to make Roylan talk. She brings in her husband, Hal, as Roylan's confidant, knowing Roylan feels unsafe discussing sensitive matters in a monitored setting. Roylan agrees, and she and Hal meet at a secluded lot. As they speak, Roylan discloses the true extent of the conspiracy to him. When Hal returns to Kate, he is visibly shaken, now burdened with the full knowledge about the attacks. Later, Kate, Idra, Hal, and Roylan gather to review the full truth. Roylan admits that she, along with MPs Lenny Stendig and Merritt Grove, orchestrated the attack on the HMS Courageous. Roylan reveals that she hired Russian terrorist Roman Lenkov to carry out what was meant to be a low-impact explosion, intending only to create a minor dent in the ship. But when the planned mild explosive became unavailable, they resorted to a small missile, which struck the fuel reserves and caused a massive explosion. After telling the truth, Roylan maintains that Trowbridge had no knowledge of the operation.
When Grove met with you and your two people, Stendig had placed a device in Merritt's car. Nicole knows none of this. Nothing.
Amid growing suspicions, Idra secures authorization to tap Trowbridge's phone, working with Kate and Hal to verify his innocence. Together, they persuade Dennison to hold off on his resignation, inviting him to join them and Trowbridge on a trip to Scotland. In Scotland, Roylan is held securely while Kate arranges a meeting with Scotland's First Minister, Gemma Dowd, who is eager to challenge Trowbridge publicly. Kate advises a diplomatic approach, encouraging restraint to avoid backlash. Trowbridge, too, agrees to maintain civility. Later, after the group's toasts, Kate quietly ushers Trowbridge away to meet with Roylan. In the tense meeting, Roylan admits to orchestrating the attack. Trowbridge's reaction is unexpected, but also immediate and violent. He lunges at her in fury, attempting to strangle her for betraying her country. Hearing the struggle from the hallway, Dennison, Hal, and Kate rush in to break up the altercation, but in the chaos, Trowbridge lets Roylan go, leading her to falling backwards on her head, with a pool of blood forming around her. Episode 5. Our Lady of Immaculate Deception. Margaret Roylan survives her violent encounter with Prime Minister Trowbridge, who ultimately decides not to hand her over to authorities. Instead, he orders her to be held in a CIA safe house, stalling until he can discern which allies in his government he can truly trust. In private, Kate and her husband Hal discuss the unfolding situation, particularly after Trowbridge confronts her over her suspicions that he orchestrated the HMS Courageous attack. Foreign Secretary Austin Dennison is equally frustrated, feeling he has almost accused his own prime minister solely based on Kate's hunch. During a shared car ride back to London, Trowbridge and Dennison unexpectedly find common ground as they air their grievances over Kate's handling of the situation, easing some of the tension between them. The following day, Vice President Grace Penn arrives in London, intending to show public support for the British government. She arranges a meeting with Trowbridge to align on a strategy, but it quickly turns tense. Grace criticizes Trowbridge's recent actions, pointing out the complications he's introduced in negotiating with Russia after blaming them for the attack on the carrier and MP Grove.
That means we'll face disbelief when next we accuse Russia of
jailing a journalist and calling them a spy, or abducting children and calling them refugees. You attacked your own ship and called it Russia.
They agree to keep their discussions under wraps, despite Dennison's suggestions to gradually release information. In a private conversation with Kate, Grace reveals that Roylan is soon to be placed under American custody. She then brings up the possibility of Kate stepping into her role as vice president, hinting that she's considering resignation. However, Grace is not willing to step aside so easily, and in an effort to eliminate Kate as an opponent, she bullies and humiliates the ambassador on her sloppy looks and unprofessional appearance, making it clear that even if Kate acts the part, she doesn't look the part. Later that night, while in bed, Kate reveals to Hal that she doesn't want the vice presidency, and that he should call Billy and say that Grace Penn should remain in office. With a quiet intensity, Hal reveals a crucial detail. It was Grace who first proposed the idea of an attack on the British ship to Royland, implicating the vice president in the very incident she's in London to smooth over. The revelation lands like a bombshell, deepening mistrust in an already fragile diplomatic circle, and Kate realizes that the depths of the conspiracy are far more personal than she'd anticipated.
Royland hired Lenkoff to shoot a British ship. But Royland didn't come up with the idea. Grace Penn did.
Episode 6, Dreadnot. After telling his wife that the US has covertly urged the UK to stage a false flag operation, Hal also reveals that US President William Rayburn is unaware of this conspiracy and the involvement of his VP. Outraged yet driven, Kate finally decides to pursue the vice presidential role, planning to bring Grace Penn down. She turns to Stuart Hayford, who has long hoped that she'd take this step, and asks him to strategize her campaign. Later, Stuart tries to reconnect with Idra, sharing Kate's new political intentions and expressing his wish to rekindle their relationship. Idra, however, dismisses him, cautioning him against mixing personal and professional life and leaving him feeling unsettled. Meanwhile, under intense scrutiny, Prime Minister Nicole Trowbridge agrees to cooperate with Foreign Secretary Austin Dennison. However, both Dennison and Trowbridge's wife Lydia urge him to consider resigning, doubting that he can root out the traitors in his government. Frustrated, Trowbridge storms off, declaring that MI6 head Tom Libby will lead the investigation. Yet later, he decides not to tell Libby, avoiding any real action to be taken. As Kate's ambitions spread, Hal informs Billy, surprising her, as Kate had previously dismissed any interest in becoming vice president. Hal tries probing for details on why Grace Penn should be removed, but Billy only hints that Grace's husband's misdeeds are involved. Meanwhile, the president assigns Grace additional responsibilities, even hinting at her involvement in nuclear weapons oversight based on praise from Trowbridge. Kate's longtime friend Carol Langhetti arrives in the UK for work, and Kate immediately offers her a cottage on her estate and invites her to a dinner party with Vice President Penn and Prime Minister Trowbridge. At the dinner, Trowbridge avoids mentioning nuclear matters and the important role Grace would be given in reducing the nuclear weapons stockpiles, while at the same time also growing their nuclear power capacity. As if rethinking her role in the whole matter, something that piques Grace's suspicions, and sensing this, she turns to Kate and Hal, questioning how they managed to thwart her announcement. Under Kate's subtle signal, Hal discloses that he and Kate are aware of her role in orchestrating the HMS Courageous's attack. Shocked, Grace excuses herself from the table and privately summons Kate. In a secluded meeting, Grace reveals that Russia has been building up their military naval presence in the Barents Sea above Russia and Scandinavia, and have even deployed multiple submarines across the Atlantic Ocean, capable of countering US fleets. This disclosure underscores why the UK's control over Scotland remains crucial, since all of the UK's nuclear weaponry is housed at the Cregan nuclear submarine base in Scotland. On top of that, Cregan is the only base in Europe where American nuclear submarines can dock. In other words, it's the last place where Russian submarine activity can be detected before it disappears into the Great Atlantic Ocean and on its way to attack any city in the US. With the added effect that the Scots hate nukes and overreach from the UK, but more importantly that they don't want to be target number one in a European theater of war, an independent Scotland would have closed the nuclear submarine base immediately. Losing this port of defense would mean a catastrophic defeat for the US, not only politically but also militarily. Only with Scotland under British rule can the US secure a military base in Cregan, Scotland, which is essential for maintaining a defense line against increasing Russian threats. Grace stresses that diplomatic ties with the UK must hold if the US is to use this base.
It's the only base in Europe where we can dock our nuclear subs. It's the last place we have any hope of detecting a Russian sub before it's in the vast Atlantic barreling toward New York.
Overwhelmed, Kate questions her commitment to the vice presidency. Confiding in Hal, she voices her urge to withdraw from the race, sparking a heated exchange. Seeking clarity, Kate visits Carol, who reminds her of Hal's unwavering support, rekindling Kate's resolve. With renewed purpose, she and Hal decide to inform Senator Miguel Gannon of Grace's involvement in the attacks in order to push her out of the office. The following day, Kate confronts Grace, declaring her intent to run for vice president. Meanwhile, Hal contacts the American embassy to arrange the call with Gannon. Yet instead, he reaches the president himself, and in hopes of giving his wife the best odds at becoming vice president, reveals Grace's involvement in the UK attacks. Being so shocked at what he has just heard, President Rayburn suffers a heart attack causing him to die on the spot. Now that President Rayburn is dead, Vice President Grace Penn is next in line and becomes the new president of the United States. With this twisted turn of events, Kate, Hal, and their allies find themselves navigating a vastly altered political landscape, facing new power struggles and unforeseen challenges that mark the beginning of a tumultuous future.
He died, Katie. The president is dead. Grace Penn is president.
And that brings us to the end of The Diplomat Season 2. It seems like international turmoil and deep-seated political corruption awaits in Season 3, so we're just gonna have to see if Kate can turn things around. Thanks again for watching this recap and for sticking through until the end. If you guys like this video, consider sharing it with a friend or maybe just dropping us a like. And if you want more great content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new video. But until next time, BingeBot is logging off.